Yeah, most of the questions, they basically like fall on each other, meaning if you do one thing, you're gonna have to do it you're gonna have to use it like in a follow-up question or something. It's just usually how it is, you know. So for example, here I'm like, whatever we're gonna do, we're probably gonna need the coordinate of the value of a. What is the value of a?
The value of a was a 2.
Was a 2, of which getting it, we can just use the coordinate y there, x there, so for a. Okay, and then okay, so clearly before we can get the term, oh no, we don't even need the equation of the inverse. And here's why. Here you see that we're dealing with 7.3, as you say. They want us to write on the domain of the inverse. Now, what do we know about the domain of the inverse of a graph? Thinking of what inverse is. Well, the domain of the inverse, yeah, is the range of the original one, you know, vice versa.
Of the original.
So, yeah. So meaning if you have h of x, right, its range is the domain of the inverse, you see, and then its domain is the range of the inverse. You see, it's because not just the x values swap around, the properties of the original graph swaps with the properties of the inverse. So for us to get the domain of the inverse, we just need to think to ourselves, what is the range of the original graph? So the range of the original graph, what is the range of our original graph here? Like, where do we see the graph from top to bottom? Which y values does this graph occupy?
From -1.
Pardon? Because you just have to ask yourself, okay, along the y-axis, right? Remember, there's a y value of 0 here, and then all these y values go up to infinity. All these y values here go down to infinity. So you want to ask yourself, based on how the image is looking, going upwards, is there any way where this graph is going to stop? Going downwards, is there any way where this graph is going to stop?
No.
Is there? No. It doesn't stop anyway. It does not go anywhere. It will have every single y value ever. You see, so the range here of h of x is just y as an element of R, you see. Because your image, if you look at it along the y-axis, it has no restrictions going down. It has no restrictions going up. You see, because in as much as it's stretching towards the right, it's going to be stretching towards the right while going up forever. You see, so that's the range, because range, you just focus on the y-axis. So because you know this is the range of h of x, the domain of the inverse is literally also just going to be x is an element of R, because you just swap the x and the y. You know, all its properties swap around. So what was being used for y, you now use it for x in the inverse function. Cool.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Let's actually keep that on its own, because